Today I want to take a few minutes and talk about the bandsaw. We're going to go over the parts, we're going to go over the operation, setup, shutdown, but before we do that, we need to talk a little bit about general shop safety. First and foremost, the most important thing you can do is wear safety glasses. They need to be stamped with the Z87 logo on the inside, and wear those at all times. Next, we need to remove any jewelry. Okay? You need to tie back any long hair, secure any loose clothing. You're wearing short sleeves for a reason. Next, you want to make sure that you have closed-toed shoes on in case you drop things. So we're going to go over the parts for the bandsaw real fast. The first thing that you need to be aware of, the on-off switch is right here. Green is go, red is stop. This is the emergency stop or the lockout switch. Next, this is the guard, and then also the blade guide. The blade guide sits back here, and it helps keep the guard steady. Come back over here. This is the blade guard adjustment wheel. This is the lock knob for the blade guard. You have to loosen this before you start turning the blade guard and trying to move it up and down. If it's at all stiff, make sure this is loose. This knob back here adjusts the blade tilt. So on there, if we look inside, this wheel can be tipped either forward or backwards based on this knob here in the middle. That's not something you guys should ever have to adjust. That's my job. This lever is the blade tension. I can drop the tension off, and I'll do that when I'm all done because we're done using the bandsaw for the foreseeable future. So, to raise and lower the blade guard, loosen the knob here in the back, and then crank this. Counterclockwise goes up, clockwise goes down. You are going to set this so that it's 1/8 of an inch above the piece that you're cutting into. So we're going to set that down, and you want it to be right there at 1/8 of an inch. If you can get your finger underneath the front of this, it's too high. Bring it down. You don't want it so low that it's touching, because if it touches, the piece doesn't slide through there freely. So you bring that back up, and keep it about 1/8 of an inch, and then tighten this knob back up. It doesn't have to be super tight, just snug. Continuing down with the parts. Down here is the brake. As you step on this, there's a brake that gets applied on here to the lower wheel. There's a brake back there, right there. As this is spinning, you can step on the brake, and we'll keep it so you don't have to stand there and wait for it to stop. The dust collection port is over here. You're going to want to make sure that is open. So, before we get started cutting, we need to draw some lines on there. The bandsaw does a really good job cutting straight lines. Don't know if you can see that one. Or cutting inside curves. So if we wanted to cut this out, okay, or you can cut outside curves. It's primarily, we use this for cutting curved objects, such as cutting this piece off or clearing this piece away inside here. We have lots of other tools that we'll go over that cut straight lines. The bandsaw will do it. It's just not as good as, say, like the table saw or the chop saw. But I will show you how to cut all 3 of these today off of this piece. So we have our lines drawn on there. Now, I always say draw the line on there. If you can't draw the line on there, you will definitely not be able to cut the line on there. You can use a compass, you can use a straight edge, whatever you need to, trace around something, but draw the lines on there. Now, with inside curves, because the bandsaw doesn't have anything physically holding the blade in place, you want to make sure that you're not going to pull this back. If you pull on it too hard, it gets stuck in a piece of wood, it's going to pop off of there, potentially break the blade, damage your piece, or potentially hurt you. So, to minimize that, on these inside cuts, you want to cut straight in, straight back. That way, as you're coming through here, if you get stuck, say here, you're only going to back out of this much of a piece. Okay, as we cut this, this will fall away, and this will fall away, and so on down the line. For the outside curve, you want to cut it straight as you can, because it will only cut a certain radius, like so tight. The wider the blade, and you see this one has a 1/2 inch blade on it, the wider that blade is, the harder it is to turn. If it's too tight, you try and twist it, again, it'll twist the blade, it'll either break the blade or cause it to pop off of there. For straight cuts, we'll use the fence, and I'll set that up here in a minute. So we have all our lines drawn on there. Now it's time to get started and actually make some cuts. Okay, so to begin cutting, first thing we're going to do, move our piece to the side, and then we make sure the knob in the back is loose, and we lower the guard down. Again, we set it to about 1/8 of an inch above. You don't have to be super exact, but notice that my finger doesn't go underneath there, like that. If it's too high, lower it down. I always recommend putting your piece underneath, just to make sure that it's going to catch at the back. If you put it here, sometimes this back piece sits a little bit low. Next, we're going to feed it in with a nice, even, steady pressure, just using your fingertips to guide it. If you have to push really hard, it means the blades, they'll stop using it. Okay, we'll make sure that that knob in the back. We are going to come over and turn it on using the green button. And notice, it's not an extremely loud machine. Here, but you're going to use just your fingertips, and we're going to cut these relief cuts straight in, straight back, straight in, straight back, straight in, straight back. Okay, once we have all of those cut, we'll start cutting all the way around it. So we have one more relief cut to make. Cut in, cut to the line. Then we're going to come back over here. Again, you're going to never have your fingers in direct line with the saw blade. And then make sure that your wood is turning that saw blade. You turn that. Now, if you have little pieces that get in the way, never use your fingers. You can use the side of whatever you're cutting, or you can use a push stick. Now, you don't have to cut exactly to the line. That's why we have sanders. But you want to get it as close as you can. Clear the pieces out of the way and keep going. I'm going to move my hand back here. And we will finish that up. When you're finished, you will slid your piece through like that. You're going to come over here, turn it off, and then come down here and gently step on the brake until the blade stops moving. Once that's done, it's safe to then reach in next to it. You never want to have your fingers come in direct line with the saw blade, but you never want to have them go over this table insert either. So to prevent that, you're going to want to use a push stick. It looks like this. It lets you keep your hand nice and far away, but still maintain control over whatever it is that you're cutting. You can feed it in backwards, slide your pieces, use this to clear out small pieces, but you can make more of these, you just can't make more of these. So, that was cutting an inside curve. To cut an outside curve is very much the same thing. We're just going to line this up like this, run it through, and I'll probably just cut it in a straight line, and depending on if it's really tight or not, you may want to run it in 2 or 3 steps. So we'll show you that here right now. not close enough, you can always come back in and take a little more off. And that gets it close, and then you finish this up on the sander, or by hand with a piece of sanding. The last thing I want to show you is cutting a straight line with that, and to do that, so the last thing that I want to show you is cutting a straight line. And to do that, we're going to use the fence. To loosen the fence, loosen the knob here. Fence slides over to where you want to cut it. So you position the fence where you want it to be with our line. And then for this, I'm going to want 2 push sticks. We're going to use 2 push sticks. I will have one in my left hand to feed it through, and then I want one for my right hand so that I don't have to try and put my fingers here. I can hold it this way and slide it through like that. And again, straight line, you just feed it through nice and easy. And because the fence is set, it will automatically cut the distance like that. Turn it off. And again, step on the brake. We're done. Move that piece out of the way. This piece is the miter gauge groove. A miter gauge is a flat, so you can adjust an angle and run that through there. We have some of those floating around the shop. Additionally, if this fence you can lay over, you loosen this, slide forward, and then you can lay it over. That way, if you're cutting a very narrow piece, you can keep it in here and get that spacing so that you can cut quarter-inch, half-inch pieces and still have this down if it's still 3/4 of an inch thick. My preference is that you guys leave it standing up like this. Leave it standing up like this and slide it over. But again, if you're ever putting your fingers over the table insert, it's too close and you need to find a different way to cut it.